Once the lights off, you can still see the screen well without the lights on, but sometimes the lights out and kind of people are watching a movie.
The dead hour, you know.
Yeah, I know.
What you can do is keep them awake.
So you have nothing wrong with the lights.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sanyavadi Paschatya Disatharine. I have many goals for this session. One of the main ones is to keep you awake. If I see you getting sleepy, I may ask everyone to stand up. I may have to tell some jokes. And tell you I'm going to tell a joke to wake you up to hear the joke. And ask you to repeat things I say and so forth. Do we have the microphone ready? Yeah, so, and this. So, I don't want to go into the next section yet until we see if you've understood the last section, and I know we would have had more discussion. And maybe there were questions. And
I want to say this. I'm not saying this one.
We have to hit something here.
Maybe you could slide.
Yeah. Okay. Remember, these are the questions that you answered, and I know from talking to some of you that it stimulated some thinking, and some of you said, I need more time to think about it. And so, does anyone have any questions or any realizations they wanted to share before I go on? Yes? We're going to give you the mic. We have someone volunteer and go around. Yes. Is it on? Click. Should light up if it's on. Okay. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the wonderful session in the morning. So we ended the session, not exactly ended, but you mentioned that don't be mental, engage all your talents in Krishna service,
Yes.
Otherwise you'll engage it outside.
Yes.
So I was thinking that sometimes we also have this identity that I am an artist, I am a singer, I am a dancer. So even while you are engaging yourself in Krishna service, but you can still retain that identity within yourself. And so how do you get over that? First part. And the second is, because we, as Prabhupada used to say, right, this is a burning house and we have to do whatever is necessary. So there are certain things, we'll have to change roles and positions many times. But if we are we're very stuck on our identity, then how do we get over it?
Well, our identity is always we're a servant of Krishna. So if you just add, I am a singer for Krishna, if you add for Krishna at the end of every identity, then you maintain that nitya. You maintain the I'm an eternal servant of Krishna, nitya Krishnadas. So as long as you have that, there's no problem because your identity remains the same. It's just a particular way that you do that service may change. So I'm a teacher for Krishna, not a teacher. Right? And even in your work, you're a cashier for Krishna because ultimately, at least some of that earnings is going to maintain a family, deity worship, donations to the temple like that. Yeah, did that answer your question or did I not
To a
understand?
certain degree, but then if somebody new walks in and then there has to be two singer or two dancer, so then it can create some amount of that I'm the only singer, I'm the best singer for Krishna.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh right. Well, so now we're talking about pride, which we talked about, which Prabhupada Swami talked about, and I have a section on pride. One of my favorite topics. It's such a deep topic, but I have noticed in myself and by observing the world that you don't have to be good at anything to be proud. And Prabhupada said that in the Bhagavad, you know that statement in Bhagavatam? Even a pauper is proud of his penny. Hridayananda Maharaj tells a story when before he was a devotee, he bought some very special boots. And he said he used to walk around college campus with these boots, and he was like thinking he was like the man, God's gift to the world, because he had these boots. You know, like he's the coolest thing that ever hit the University of California at Berkeley. Till I got there, because I thought I was even cooler. Because I wore torn t-shirts and torn jeans, so I was even cooler. So you can wear a torn t-shirt and think you're the coolest and become proud. So if you're ever thinking you're good at something, that's okay, because you might be. And we don't want to deny it. It's like denying I have $1 million in the bank. No, I have it. Prabhu, you're rich. No, I'm not. I'm just a poor servant of Krishna. No, you are rich. You have $1 million. Well, $1 million isn't that much anymore. But anyway, you're richer than most people. So what's the point of denying it? But if that $1 million or that ability to sing or dance or whatever it is makes you think I am better than other devotees, that talent will destroy you. Because humility means to think everyone's better than me. I have to tell you this story. It just happened like 2 months ago. So I went to Barshana, and in Barshana there's a Baba there named, what's his name? What's his name? No, not Ramesh Baba. Another one. No. He has the name of that devotee from Croatia that was in Gurukul when we were all there in the 90s. Remember that Croatian devotee? He's now in Australia. You remember him? I think he might have been in charge of might have had an ashram lead. Yeah, he's super smart, learned Sanskrit. Yeah. Vino Bihar, yeah, so. Yeah, Russian, yeah. Okay, Vino Bihar. So I was introduced to him, the devotee took us on Parikram, and he said that he's like the most respected Baba here now in Varshan. And then he introduced me. He told me that, I think Indraduma Swami told me he gets up at 3 o'clock and starts chanting till 3 in the afternoon. So, obviously I respect that, and he's living there, and obviously I look up to a devotee that way, who's so advanced like that. So this devotee introduced me. He said, here's Mahatma Prabhu, he's a disciple of Prabhupada, and he preaches around the world in different places. And he immediately offered pranams and he said, please bless me. And so, you can hear about these things in books, but when it actually happens to you, you understand something about humility. And it was clear that when someone is humble, he thinks anybody can bless me because everybody's more qualified than I am. That's humility. So, pride is the opposite. And therefore, anything can stimulate pride if that's what I want. Then I will grab it. Anywhere I can buy it, I will get it. So if I walk in the temple with my new kurta, you like my kurta? My wife picked it up. I only wear what she picks out. If she didn't pick out clothes, I would look like pretty much a bum, more or less. You're wearing a t-shirt or something, and it probably have tomato sauce on it. No, not that bad, but sometimes that bad. Yeah. So I walk in the temple. Hey, everybody, check it out. Better than your kurta. Look at that kurta. Faded brown. Come on. You should get a kurta like me. So I don't need anything to become proud. I just need a kurta. And he's going, wait a minute, my kurta is better than yours. I don't think yours is so great. So, if we want to be honored, we will look for any little tiny thing. Isn't it? Up 1 penny, not to become proud of. That's the problem that we're actually looking for. So it's no problem in being talented. I was with, we took years ago, maybe, 10 years ago, my wife and I were doing some tours. We did a few tours of India, and so we were able to bring this tour to Govardhaniko village when Radhanath Swami was going to be there. So he came, and my wife introduced him. That he's doing this project and that project and this project and that project and this project, and I wrote this book and these disciples, blah, blah, blah. And Maharaj, in his typical style, started laughing. He said, I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting here chanting. What am I doing? He doesn't want to be acknowledged. It's not important for him. And he acknowledges that so much of what's going on is by the mercy of Prabhupada and the mercy of his disciples that are doing this, intelligent disciples. He's just not saying that to look good. Because sometimes we'll say that because we want to be praised. We'll say, oh, I'm not doing anything. And we want everyone to say, oh, just see, he's so humble. Isn't it? So, you will notice, just being honest, you will notice amongst advanced devotees, they honestly don't see their talents. No, they don't see their talents as something to magnify their egos. They really see it as, okay, Krishna gave me this gift, but he could take it away. Sometimes when I'm preparing for a course, I listen to lectures that I gave 10 years ago. And I will take notes on my own lectures. Some things I go, oh, I said that? That's amazing. Because in the process of saying it, it wasn't planned. It just came out. And so I understand. I can even listen to myself like I'm not myself. Because it's a fact. Krishna gives us ability and takes it away. One time I was leading a kirtan in Toronto. It was a Sunday feast, and everybody was dancing ecstatically. And Krishna spoke to me from the heart, and he said, don't think you're making this happen. Because if you do, I will take away all your Shakti. It was very clear. Don't identify with success. Because if you want to identify with success, you're just competing with me because I'm doing it. And if you want to be empowered, you can't think that way. You have to remove that. So the message was, if you want empowerment, if you want to serve me, you have to remove that false ego. Because all pride is when you boil it down to Burfi, is just wanting to be God. And we don't like to admit that. But that's what it is. And when you understand that's what it is, it's a lot easier to become humble, because you realize by this pride, I'm really just competing with him. All glories to Radha Madan Mohan, and how about 10% glories to me on the side? Would that be okay? So it requires a lot of removal of false ego and self-honesty to acknowledge the pride. That, we do a workshop on humility, and one of the exercises is we ask devotees, can you remember things you've done for Krishna that although it was with good intention, there was some desire to be recognized at the same time? Maybe 50-50, 60-40, 70, whatever. And one devotee raised her hand and said, I cannot think of anything I've done that was purely motivated. There was always some desire. Very honest, right? And I'm not saying that's true for all of us, but sometimes there is some motive, right? Mahatma Prabhu, why did you come here to Potomac? So all of you could see how great I am. What other reason would I come for? But it's not that if we have an opportunity to speak or to perform, that thought may not come in our minds. Why did I come here? I came here to help you. I came here to serve you. And I remind myself always that as a teacher, that's why I've come. You can like it, you can not like it. I hope you like it, not to like me, but that it helps you. That's my intention. There's a teacher, and before he speaks to large crowds. He's a psychologist, but he also has an Indian guru and personalist. He's quite famous. He's no longer alive. But he said something that I really like. He said, before I go to speak, I chant a mantra for 45 minutes backstage. And the mantra is, how can I serve? How can I serve? How can I serve? I did a training on how to facilitate seminars. And, they showed us how you have to be bigger than life when there's, 3,000 people in the room. And you're on the stage because you're just this little guy. You really have to act it out. Even 1,000, even 500. But at the same time, they said, and you need to entertain people because people learn when they're having fun. So it's very fun. They tell lots of jokes. They do like what I do. Turn to the person next to you, tell them you're amazing, and things like that. Everybody laughs. So we have fun. But at the same time, they said, it's not about you. It's not about you wanting to get people to like you and appreciate you and applaud for you. It's about them. That's that. So when you're chanting, it's about the deities. It's not about people applauding. You did a nice kirtan, and you did this beautiful kirtan, you walk out of the temple. If you're more advanced, you don't want people coming up to you and saying, oh, that was such a nice kirtan. You want them coming up to you and say, oh, the deities were so beautiful. But if you're not on that level, you walk out of the kirtan and nobody says anything. Well, that's it, I'm never leading kirtan here again. It can happen, right? Not that it can happen, it does happen. And if we're not careful, it will happen to us. But we'll talk more about that in the section on humility, and we'll do some exercises. The real question that I wanted you to ponder, or whatever your enemy was, is why? How did it get there? Why is it there? What are you trying to get from doing this? What are you trying to avoid by not acknowledging? There's so much below the surface that you have to catch in order to correct it, right? I can tell you some things I've caught in my life. It'll help you. I'll tell you one in the section when it comes up. But it's subtle. Okay, thank you for that question. Did that answer your question? Yes. Is that Riddhi? Yeah, I couldn't tell whose hand that was. This is Riddhi from Krishna House in Gainesville. She's now going to be taking care of all the girls, the new girls that move in.
Thank you. This is a really nice class this morning, and one thing that you were emphasizing was we need to be decisive, and we need to choose, and we need to decide. You can't make a decision, then Maya will make a decision for us.
Yes.
And recently I've just been noticing how I'm a very indecisive person. I'm like, oh, this is good, but this is also good. It's just very hard for me to choose one and decide. So what can help me to...
Why are you afraid to decide?
Because I guess it will be the wrong choice. I want the best of both.
Yeah. Are you afraid it's going to be wrong and then you've been a failure? Is that it? Or that you're afraid of a bad outcome? Or both?
I think maybe a bad outcome. I want the best outcome.
Yeah, that's good.
Miss any opportunity.
So what do? You don't make any choice?
Maybe I procrastinate usually.
So there's one teacher who's kind of like one of the foundational teachers of the whole self-development world, and I don't think it was even intentional, but people studied him. His name is Buckminster Fuller, and he said that, this is his observation, we could discuss the merits or demerits of it, but I think there's a lot of truth to this. He said human beings learn. They can't learn unless they fail. They have to. There's some things you'll never learn till you learn how to do it wrong. Now you learn how to do it right. So why I was asking the first question is I think a lot of times we may be indecisive because we have issues with failing, because self-image, and we won't like ourselves if we fail, and we'll think other people won't like us, and then we'll become discouraged because we'll think we're a failure. And what the self-help gurus, they say is you should fail as quickly as possible and as much as possible because you'll learn quicker. So maybe that will help you. And as we said earlier, how do you know that the decision is right or wrong? Make one of them and you'll find out. And just have, strategy to deal with it if it's the wrong decision. And you don't have to be God. You won't know everything. And, discuss with senior devotees. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think? These are the pros and cons. What do you think? I think a lot of us have this fear of failure because we will feel humiliated, if not from others, from our own self. And if you have that problem, a lot of times you want to put that problem in the closet and not recognize it. So that's something to be aware of. And something else I didn't tell you that I want to tell you. I teach a course in vows, and what relates from that course to what we're talking about today is that the word vrata means to decide. Did you know that? That's what it means. Actually, I made a decision, right? So that's important. And the second point, okay, at the count of three, everyone who are resting their eyelids can open them now. 1, 2, 3. Haribo. Okay. Okay, can everyone chant Gauranga? Okay. So, what is really, really important for us to understand, we take vows, we take marriage vows, we take initiation vows, we may take some other vows, but those are the two main vows we take. And once we take them, we think we made the vows and it's over. So I want to tell you a story about the man who was married 25 times. So he was being interviewed, and the question was asked to him, I heard you've been married 25 times. Yes, that's true. And he said, but it's to the same woman. Every year we get married again and we recommit. So when you go deeply into understanding what it means to make a vow, then you realize you have to make that vow every day. Every day you get up, if you vowed to chant 16 rounds and follow the 4 principles, that vow you made, for me, I made it more than 52 years ago. I have to make it every day. It can't be one vow in half a decade ago. It loses Shakti. So you have to make that vow every day. So you made a decision. Every day you have to make that decision. That's an important point. Yes? Gopal, you agree? Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to tell you something. This is scary. Are you ready? Turn to the person next to you and tell them, this is going to be scary. It is scary. So, I went to a temple. I won't mention the temple. I won't mention any names. But it happens to be near a place called Hertfordshire. Yeah. But I won't mention the name. It doesn't actually matter. Hertfordshire, actually. That's not in America. So, I did a course on vows, and I said, what I would like to do in this course is, let's do a mock initiation, and all the devotees who are initiated, you can retake your vows. What do you think of that? Like every year, Ananda, on January 1st, you have a yajna, everyone is going to retake their vows. That would be interesting, don't you think? So I asked all the devotees in the workshop, I don't know how many were there, how many of you would like to do this? How many people do you think raised their hand? All of them? 2 of them? None of them? None of them. Hare Krishna, none of them. I was shocked. I told you that's scary. Yeah, it's a true story. If we're making vows every day, they would all say, yeah, let's do it. Anyway, I really like that idea. In fact, maybe I'll institute it, at least with my disciples every year. We take vows again. Why not? Take marriage vows again, take initiation vows. Now, there's something I want to show you that I didn't, it's on the board. This is very powerful. Because the question is always coming up, how do I have this enemy, and I know it's an enemy, and I know what I should do to conquer it, but how do I actually do that? So I'll read the first sentence. Link pain to being controlled by this enemy. So here's a question that you can ask yourself. Think of the enemy I want you to visualize the enemy. And while you're visualizing that enemy, I want you to feel right now, not think, but feel what it's like when you show up and allow that enemy to control you. How do you feel? Just go with that feeling. I know it's not going to make you happy to feel that, but just go with that feeling because it'll help you understand this exercise. When you give in to that enemy, how do you feel? And Gopal's going to say, I feel like prasadam that's been left outside for 21 days in the sun, right? Something like that. Yeah. Just go with that feeling, how you feel when you give in to that enemy. When you show up being controlled by that enemy, how do you feel? Okay, now stay with that feeling. I want you to feel bad. Just, sounds bad that I want you to feel bad, but feel bad because it'll help you. Because I know this is a bad feeling. Don't hide from it, just embrace it. You have to go to a psychiatrist. Prema, when you show up as the person you hate, how do you feel? When you act, say, this is the, you do something, and why did I do that? I hate myself when I act that way. How do you feel? You don't feel like you're full of shit. I know that. Right. You feel like you're full of something else. It sounds like that. How do you feel when that person, you know that person you hate to be, and you act that way, and you've told yourself, I never want to act that way, how do you feel? Yeah, you feel bad. Everyone hold that feeling. I'm going to ask you a question. How will you feel 5 years from now if you still allow that enemy to control you? Just go with that feeling. It should be more intense than you were feeling already. How will you feel 10 years from now if you still allow that enemy to control you? How will you feel 20 years from now, living 20 years with that enemy controlling you? How does that feel? And now you're on your deathbed, still that enemy is controlling you. You look back at your life and you realize, I allowed this enemy to control me. How will you feel? What are we doing here? When you want to overcome something that's difficult, there has to be an emotional connection. It can't just be intellectual for most of us. I just made an emotional connection to the pain you're feeling. And I bet a lot of you didn't even realize how bad that makes you feel until right now. Because we're really good at suppressing emotions when they make us feel bad. But these emotions, if you connect to them and you allow yourself to feel bad, can motivate you to give it up. Because you confront this reality, I don't want to be this person. I hate this person that I show up as. And if I allow myself to experience that, how I feel, I don't want to feel that anymore. And if I project that into my life, I don't want to live my life that way. So what are we doing? We're creating an emotional connection of pain towards an action or an attitude we want to renounce. Isn't that the way Krishna created this world? He created it painful, to make it painful so we would give it up. I want to tell you a story. This is a true story. There was a man in a seminar, and the facilitator was using this technique. So he called the man up and said, what is your favorite food? And he said, pizza, like normal American, pizza, or pasta, pizza. What do you like on it? I like all this on it. They ordered a pizza and they brought it to him. And then the facilitator said, tell me all the bad things about this pizza. So he's like, it's fattening, it's not healthy, cholesterol, it's hard to digest, etc., etc. He got him to, on an emotional level, feel the negative things about the pizza, which if you like pizza, you definitely don't want to think about when you're eating, because that would ruin everything, right? We could do a little skit of a smarty aleck, You're sitting down, you're starving, you're about to eat the pizza. You know that has 47 grams of sodium, and it has so many grams of fat, and every bite of that pizza will put 1 inch on your spare tire around your waist, just going on and on. And if you eat a pizza like this every week, do you know the chances of you having a heart attack before you're 50 are 79.34%. It's like, could you get out of here? I just want to eat my pizza. So that's what we do, right? When that little voice says, you shouldn't do this, it's like, shut up, I'm going to do it. Don't stop it, right? So he was getting this man to say all the things we would never say, right? And he said so many things. And then the facilitator said, okay, do you want to eat the pizza? And he said, it's making me nauseous to look at it. Hare Krishna. In 1982, I stayed with a devotee who had studied yoga with the Himalayan yogis. And he was helping me with diet. I was 32 at that time. And he gave me a whole talk about the demerits of sugar. So many, not raw sugar, processed, refined sugar. All the things that is bad, that it does to your body. And honestly, I couldn't eat sugar. For like the next decade, I never ate sugar. And I don't eat much now, but it's like I knew too much, and it affected me on an emotional level. So if you want to stop doing something that you think is difficult to stop, or you have to associate emotion, you have to associate this negativity. And you have to start thinking, do I want to live my life like this? Do I want to be a jerk like this the rest of my life? I certainly don't, you know. You know the feeling when you said something and you're thinking, why did I say that? That was the worst thing. A lot of devotees say, you know, when I'm in a situation, sometimes I get aggravated and I get angry. How do I control that? And I say, you don't control it in the situation. You control it before the situation. It's like going into a boxing arena. He says, well, when he comes with his left jab, what do I do? I said, you should have been practicing that for the last 6 months before you step in the arena. It's not like you're just going to figure it out. I mean, some boxers, they practice and they can figure out, but if you're not practiced, you can't figure it out. So, if you deal with your stuff when you're not in that environment where you get disturbed, you do an exercise like this. Gradually, you will start to become attracted to the opposite behavior. Right? So the other side of this exercise is the second sentence. Link pleasure to conquering this enemy. So how are we going to do this? Think of your enemy. Think how you feel. You're on your deathbed. Now, think now how you would feel if you didn't have that enemy. Just go with that feeling. What does it feel like? That enemy is gone, no longer controls me. How do you feel right now? You actually feel like you're full of chit, right? Full of ananda. Yes? Feels good to be free of that? Of course it does. This is something you can use in your life. Imagine what it's like to be free of this anartha that is plaguing me. And imagine what it's like if I live my life with it. And gradually you will gravitate towards wanting to become free. Now you're motivated. You have a reason to become free. I think a lot of us don't have a reason. You know, mostly. Remember, Bhakti Vihar, you were given a class, I don't know if you remember, it was in Mayapur. And something came up about laziness. And you asked me, he said, well, what's your opinion on it? And I gave opinion. It wasn't my opinion, but I heard this beautiful aphorism. You could call it an aphorism. He said, sometimes we think we're lazy when we're not. We're just not motivated. We need something to motivate us. You remember that? Yeah. So, this kind of exercise is motivating. You know, we need a motivator. This is how I can be. So, I think that's important. That's something I just want to offer you to practice in your life. And this is also from the Yoga Sutras. Yoga Sutras, in it, we detach from things for which we have negatives, and we attach to things for which we have positives. So whenever you're trying to give up an attachment or wondering why you're attached, in your memory, you have associated positive things with it, which is good if it's what you want to be attached to. That's why. There's pleasure associated with it, and that's what causes attachment. If you associate displeasure or suffering with something, it causes detachment. This is just jnana. This is, when you have love of Krishna, when you're more advanced, then you don't need this, because you'll just do the right thing all the time. This is jnana. Clear out the jungle so I can get to Krishna. These are the things in the way. I have all these. I come with a suitcase full of attachments, right? So, okay, Prabhus, what's in your suitcase? Okay, you've got all your suitcases in front of you. Okay, what's in them? And you say, well, I've got this one and this one and this one. Okay, well, which one of those attachments is unhealthy? And you say, well, this one and this one. And then I'll say, well, you ready to pull it out? I don't know, Prabhu. How will I be happy if I pull this out? You have to associate suffering, pain with it. Or you have to learn how to engage it. One of those two, one or the other. Is that okay? So that's what I wanted to say. Does anyone have anything else they want to say about? Yeah, yes.
So as you said, we are really good at suppressing
Yes.
the man and like kind of not to suppress, like sometimes it bypasses.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a bypass. So you do it again and again and again. So, because you've done it so many times, it's become like a habit now.
Yes.
So how to like make sure that it doesn't happen, like you don't bypass.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question. Why do you think you're bypassing it?
Like it's just become a habit. Right?
Right.
So you,
Well,
like
why do you?
muscle memory.
Okay. So it's a habit. But how did the habit start? What
So
was
as you
going
said,
on?
You did it once, and then it was a little bit of pleasure, and then you want that pleasure again.
Yeah. But you know it's bad for you.
When you know it's bad for you.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, that's a good question. The way I look at it is, if you're doing something that is bad for you and you don't want to do it and you're doing it, you've disconnected from that part of you that's connected to doing the right thing, because it's harder to do the right thing. And so what I have found that works for me is affirming what I want to do, reminding myself, I don't want to do this. I give into this, but I don't want it. I don't like it. I want to be like this, like the exercise we just did. If I could be like this, then I would be happy. That's the person I want to be. I don't want to show up as a person without compassion, who's selfish, who's not empathetic, who's intolerant, not forgiving, etc. But I do it. So I connect with those things that I really want to be, and I affirm, I want to be forgiving. That's who I really want to be. I want to be tolerant. This is the person I want to be. And then, the other thing you can do is, this is actually going into our next exercise, actually. The other thing you can do is think of somebody who embodies those qualities as an exemplar for you. And you can think of them when you're in that situation, when you're about to give in, and just ask yourself, what would they do? My exemplar is Jayananda. WWJD, what would Jayananda do? Christians have WWJD, what would Jesus do? It can be, what would my Guru Maharaj do? I always have a joke with people when especially my disciples, when they say goodbye, I say, don't do anything I wouldn't do. So it's like WWMD. What would Mahatma do? So I found this, sometimes this has saved me from giving into, as you say, a habit, which is sometimes so unconscious. We act upon it. What you're pointing to is these are unconscious behaviors that have to come to the conscious so we can be aware of them. Because in our forgiveness course, we do an exercise and we help devotees realize there's so many behaviors they're performing that are not aligned with Krishna consciousness. They don't even know they're doing them. They're not aware while they're doing that. So I'm going to tell you a story. This is kind of funny, and you're going to think this is gross, but I have to tell you because it's a good example of this. During COVID, we're wearing masks, and I'm traveling. So the first time I travel, when I was in the bathroom passing urine, I spit in my mask. Why did I do that? Anybody here spit in their mask? Only one. We must be brothers. So there was this revelation that went off. I go, oh, when I pass urine, I spit in the urinal. And I had no idea. Now, how long have I been doing that? Every time I did it with my mask on, I go, oh no, I just spit in my mask. Now I take it off. It's totally unconscious. I had no idea I was doing it. That was so crazy. How could I not? Who knows how many times I've done it, and I had no idea I was doing it until I wore a mask. How many things are you doing that you have no idea that you're doing? And your wife says, Prabhu, you always do this. And what do you say? I never do that. What are you talking about? And your wife's like, oh my God, I married this guy. Isn't it? So, if we want to progress in bhakti, we have to be more self-aware of all these unconscious behaviors. Because now you can catch them and you can start thinking, oh, yesterday when I was talking to this devotee, I didn't listen to one thing they said, and I cut him off 10 times. And now, because now you're in this mood to be more self-aware, you realize it and you go, how long have I been doing that? Maybe my whole life, and it's only today that I realize I'm doing it. And then you go and tell your wife, and she's like, yeah, it's about time you figured that out. Isn't it? So it's kind of a mindset, you know. One mindset is I'm perfect and I don't want to think I'm not perfect, and it's too depressing to think I'm not perfect, and I just want to live in this illusion that I'm perfect and I don't make any mistakes. And I, live that way. But it doesn't help your spiritual life at all. And part of humility means the willingness to look at that without making a personal judgment that you're good or bad, but just look at it so you can improve it. The problem we have is we look at it and then we make a judgment. I'm bad because I do that. And then we just don't want to look at it. But if you can look without judgment, then you say, this is what I do, I can improve it. And so the judgment part is where you get in trouble. Yes, Prabhupada Priya. Hare Krishna. It's actually a mindset. Introspection is a mindset. And once you start developing it, all this stuff comes up to your awareness, because you finally got your ego in a place where you're like, okay, I'm going to look at this. I actually want to look at it. I don't need to pretend to myself or anybody. If we want to pretend to ourselves and others, we won't see it. And we'll drive a lot of people crazy. And you can't be a leader in that consciousness, because people will say you're doing this, and you'll say, no, I'm not. I'm the leader, I don't make mistakes, I'm perfect. Yes?
So I was trying to put these concepts together, that when something causes us pain, then we can be detached from it. When something gives us pleasure, then we want to hold on to it. So then it would follow that the reason that we're holding on to these negative things like pride or enjoying spirit or controlling, tendency, is because we think these things are giving us an advantage somehow. So, for example, and we're a little bit afraid of the alternative, which, Shastra, Guru Sadhu Shastra tells us it's better, but we're not so sure. For example, if I give up my controlling propensity, does that then mean that people are going to control me, I'm going to be manipulated, I'm going to be exploited? Yeah. If I give up my pride, does that mean people are going to walk all over me, I'm going to be a nobody? So, how do we convince ourselves that it's actually better to let go?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you something scary. Everybody, turn to your partner and tell them, this is going to be scary. This is really scary. You thought the last one was scary. You ain't heard nothing yet. So, those negatives that you're talking about, they actually become addictions. Chemical addictions in our body. Because we've done them so much, we're actually addicted to those experiences even though they're negative. Is that scary? Like, do you know, I know people, I joke with them, and they're always stressed. And I say, is it true that if you weren't stressed, you would be stressed that you're not stressed? And they'll say, yeah, I would be. I would be quite uncomfortable if I wasn't stressed. So it's actually a chemical addiction, because different emotions secrete different hormones. I'm not a doctor, but you understand. Your mind is a pharmacy, and it's so. And it's the same thing with pleasure. What are those hormones they call? Endorphins and serotonin and all that from pleasure. So you're actually getting addicted to those experiences. They say when you get likes, what is it? You get serotonin highs or something? Endorphins? Dopamine, yeah. Dopamine from likes on Facebook. I would say inherent in your question, you could deal with it through faith. That if I give up what is not Krishna conscious, no matter what fear I have of what the result will be, it will always be the best thing. Doing the right thing is always the best thing. And don't worry about the result, just do the right thing. That's the policy I've developed. Sometimes you can look at it and you're thinking, but if I do this, it's not going to work out this way. So then we kind of compromise. You ever done that? Well, just this one time, nobody's looking. And I've come to realize that that's not what Prabhupada taught us. He taught us, do it the right way, whatever the outcome is the outcome it should be. So, I would never not be humble because I think people will take advantage of me. If they want to take advantage of me, that's fine. I'd rather be humble and take advantage of than be proud and not take advantage of. Because I'm not going to get back to Godhead. And I'm not going to please Krishna with pride. So I always opt for the right thing. With faith that if I do the right thing, the right result will always come. Prabhupada, look what he did. He became... he was criticized so much by his godbrothers for what he did, started his own movement, so on. But his mood was, let's make Bhaktisiddhanta smile, do what he wants. So, does that make sense, or do you want to go deeper?
So then we just kind of have to accept it theoretically on faith that it's better?
Well, I would say, I don't think anything works theoretically. It's got to, everything that we understand has to connect on a deeper level. So, can you connect with this idea, if something is right, it's right, no matter what the consequence is. If I do the right thing, it's right, and that's all that matters. If you can connect on that level, like this is dharma, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is the right thing, and I never will compromise doing the right thing, just because I think somebody won't like it or somebody may mistreat me or whatever. I don't want to compromise, because then I'm compromising my own integrity. So then I'm allowing somebody to control my action because I'm afraid how they'll react to what I do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, doing the right thing makes sense. I believe that the right thing should be the thing that we do.
Yeah. And so don't ever do the wrong thing to protect yourself from other people who won't appreciate the right thing. There's a saying, other people may criticize you, but don't give them any evidence that the criticism is true. So I did the right thing. Now you can criticize me and say I was ill-motivated and whatever, but I know what my motivation was, and I know that I did this for the right reason. So I'm okay. And if you're not okay, what can I do? And a lot of those people that aren't okay in the future, they become okay because they see that you're still a devotee and you're steady, and they realize they misjudged you. There's also a saying that when you criticize somebody, in this case somebody criticizing you, it says more about you than the person you're criticizing. So I think it's helpful for us to understand. If I did my best, if I acted with integrity and I'm still being criticized, it probably means that that person has a need to criticize. And I cannot give up my duty because I'm going to upset them. Because I pretty much know whatever I do will upset them. They just don't like me. And some of you who are women who are advancing in Krishna consciousness, unfortunately there are some men who don't like that because they're insecure men. It makes them feel weak. What are you supposed to do? Not become Krishna conscious because you're going to offend a few weak men? I don't think so. So if it's right, it's right. And if it's right, we should do it. Never compromise your principles to get a result. That's the point. Never compromise your principles. I would rather get less of a result and not compromise my principles than get a bigger result and compromise. Look at this. This story is amazing. This story is what? Amazing. The story is what? Amazing. Turn to the person next to you and say, "You are amazing." So, the biggest book distribution party in the history of ISKCON was the Radha Damodar party. The Radha Damodar party was stealing brahmacharis from the temples. When that bus came in and that bus left, you could count the number of brahmacharis that left your ashram. And it wasn't one or two. So the temple presidents were lodging complaints against the leader of this party. And Prabhupada was so frustrated with him. And some of you know the story. So Prabhupada brought him in, and Prabhupada was really upset with him. The devotees are complaining, what are you doing? And he was trying to explain it and make some excuses. And then he said, maybe I should just go to China. Like, everybody hates me. It's just like, maybe I should go to Siberia or, North Pole. Just get out of everybody's hair. And so as the story goes, Prabhupada called him the next day. And he knew that Prabhupada was going to ask him to go to China. So when Trivikram Swami came and said, Prabhupada wants to talk to you, you know what he said? No, I'm not going. Because he knew that. And he came in and Prabhupada said, Krishna spoke to you and you should go to China. He said, but Prabhupada, we are the biggest book distribution party in America. And if I go, it will all fall apart. And Prabhupada said, it is my party, it is not your party. I pull you out. And when he was pulled out, the party, it just didn't last very long. This was the most important program for Prabhupada, book distribution, with the biggest book distribution party. And because so many temple presidents were complaining, his behavior, Prabhupada was so concerned that this was wrong, he was willing to dissolve the biggest book distribution party to do the right thing. I mean, nothing. It's supposed to be 4 a.m., not 4 p.m. Anyway, 4 p.m. sometimes in the afternoon when you eat too much prasad. So I think this story says a lot. At least it does to me. And there are other stories where Prabhupada, he didn't want us to compromise our principles to get a result. Rare cases, rare, like disaster, if we don't get this money tomorrow, and then the money comes, maybe not in the best way. So there's a story that actually happened. The devotees were being kicked out of a temple unless they bought the building, and they were given like 2 weeks to make a $20,000 down payment. They didn't have money. And they were able to get some money. The money wasn't exactly white money. So, and they told Prabhupada where it was coming. And Prabhupada said, okay. So, this money was available later. And they said, Prabhupada, we want to fix the temple. This money is available later. And he said, Prabhupada said, no, you cannot take this money. He said, we are preaching against drugs, and they're making money selling drugs. How can we take this money? It was a lot of money. And then one point, he said, we have this money. And he said, don't give it to me. It's contaminated. He said, you can give it to Didi if you want. I won't touch it. Prabhupada said that. It's contaminated. But anyway, the point is, the devotee said, but Prabhupada, last time you allowed us to take this money. He said, it was an emergency. We would have lost our temple. We had no choice. So it's not that he's not willing to compromise principles, but it's extremely rare. I mean, how many times does that happen? Once, twice? So Prabhupada set the example. Willing to make sacrifice. Don't compromise your principles. So if you just adopt that, then I think that whole problem is solved. Sound too easy?
I think I'm afraid to be humble.
Yeah, that's there. Well, that's a good realization. I think we're all afraid to be too humble. But that's a good question to ask. It's like, why do I need this praise? Like, what's going on in me that I need it? What's lacking in me? What do I fear? I don't get it. What insecurities do I have? What needs do I have that are being fulfilled by getting this praise? These are, this is exactly what I was just talking about with him. That you're going into it. You're starting to think about it, going deeper and deeper, like getting down. Like, okay, you admit it. I think I need praise. Okay, that's good to acknowledge that. Got the false ego out of the way. Next step. Why do I need it? What am I getting from it? What am I going to lose if I don't get it? I was asking myself the same question today. Like, why would I need anybody to acknowledge anything about me? And I'm going to give you the answer. The reason we have a need for someone to acknowledge something about us is because we don't believe it ourselves. That's why. So if you want me to acknowledge that you're intelligent, it's probably because you doubt it. You doubt it in yourself. If you want me to acknowledge that you're a good devotee, you probably doubt it in yourself. And so you need other people to fill that little space of your doubt. Something to think about.
Also, it can be like, if there was a person in your life that was very close and influential that was always telling you, like, that you're useless and stupid.
Yeah, oh,
and
definitely.
Then sometimes you need to hear,
Yeah,
actually, I'm not.
Yeah, okay. So this is a very good question because this is quite common. And so she's saying, if you have someone in your life who has told you you're less intelligent, then naturally you want to replace that because it's in the negative, right? You want to get it out of the red. How do you do that? You have to do it yourself. Because if you depend on other people to do it, then you become, it's just a weakness. And then you can't have good relationships depending on other people to praise you. Because that's something you have to develop within yourself. That I'm okay. Whatever intelligence I have, it's okay. I can use it for Krishna. Or if you do something and you like you give a good class and you say, "Wow, Prabhupada, you're pretty smart. That was a good class." Right? Nobody else may say it, right? You may be the only one, but why not acknowledge it in a humble way?
But then how is that not being proud?
You're grateful that Krishna has given you that ability. The gratefulness will neutralize pride. Thank you, Krishna, for giving me this ability. I can use it for you. I'm so grateful. And I acknowledge it's an ability, and I don't think I'm better. I just want to use it. And my mother told me I was stupid my whole life. And that is a problem for me because I lack self-confidence in some ways. And to serve Krishna, I need that self-confidence, and I need to objectify it, that this actually was a good class, and I need to tell myself that so I can better serve. So it's all about service. It's not about me being proud. It's just about me being okay with who I am. Not thinking I'm useless, stupid, can't do anything right, dumb woman, like that. And gentlemen, don't ever say these things to your wife because it damages them. You cannot tell somebody there's something wrong with them consistently without that damaging them. It's going to sink in sooner or later. And just look at Prabhupada. He was the ultimate encourager. Prabhupada had some really, really difficult disciples, but he encouraged everybody. He would correct them. Why did you do that? It's wrong. What are you going to do? Let's correct it. And after it was corrected, everything was fine. He never said, how could anybody be so stupid to do that? If you had a brain, you'd be dangerous. He never said things like that. And a million other sarcastic remarks. He would just say, how could you do that? It's foolish. Pay attention. Correct it, and no character assessments. Then everything was fine. So we have to be careful. And parents with children need to be careful also. Is that okay? We're getting somewhere?
Thank you. Yeah, I won't take any more time here.
Anyway, I think what you're saying is relatable to many people. And I think it's a good example of exploring what's going on. And there's I gave a whole series on spiritual bypassing, which a lot of devotees said was some of the best things they've ever. It helped them. I don't know the best thing, but it helped them a lot. And that's probably on YouTube, Mahatma Das YouTube or Facebook. And spiritual bypassing means like to neglect everything you said and just do your sadhana and think this will all take care of itself. But after being devotees for so many years, we realize that a lot of things don't take care of themselves unless we take care of them. And by spiritual bypassing, it's just ignoring them and saying, I'll chant them away, which is true. You can chant many things away, especially if you chant purely. But the holy name wasn't necessarily prescribed for certain problems, psychological problems. And or our chanting isn't pure enough to go to that level. Like we have a lot of, ISKCON is not famous for the best marriages, at least in the Western world, right? But the people married, many of them are very advanced devotees who chant really good rounds. They just have bad marriages. And so we realize, well, if your marriage is bad, go to a marriage counselor. Work on it. Why do I need a marriage counselor? I chant 32 rounds every day. Well, the reason you need one is because your marriage isn't working. But, it's supposed to work, you just chant. Well, you're going to wait for it to work? You'll be divorced by that time. So we have to acknowledge it's despite our bhakti, something's wrong. Something's missing. We don't understand. Something about myself that's disturbing you. Something about you that's disturbing me. We need to deal with it. Right? And if you enter it like, oh, I'm the husband, whatever you do, whatever I say, just do, that's not going to work because that's not real. Right? What is Prema, you have the then?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a little bit covered, but I was just going to say that when somebody has a really low self-esteem and too much of self-judgment,
yes,
they really don't have ability to look at anything. They just react to anything and everything because they're so identified. What would be your advice?
Yeah, it's painful. Because if you have low self-esteem, you need to be built up. And that's why, we don't realize this, but when you give a class on humility and you start telling people humility means to see your faults and you should really get in and dig them up, the people who have low self-esteem, they have a huge problem with that. Because that's all they do all day. But they do it in the wrong way. They do it with judgment. So when we say look at the faults, we're not saying look at the faults to prove that you're the worst of the worst of the worst. We're doing it to say, if you don't focus on your faults, you know whose faults you're going to focus on. Everybody else's. That's the point. So you have to understand something about low self-esteem when you preach about humility. Otherwise it can backfire. You can actually harm people and discourage them. So people with low self-esteem do need to be built up, but the best way to build it up is through self-compassion and appreciating who they are. Arrogance is the opposite of low self-esteem. And both in arrogance and low self-esteem is that there's a misjudgment, because you're not this and you're not this, you're this, but you think you're either this, or if you want to make up for this, you try to go up here and get everybody's, show off for everybody. But if you can accept yourself as you are, acknowledge it without pride, and be okay with it, and use what you have to serve Krishna. You know that example, the fish trying to climb up the tree. Another fish goes, hey, water. We're meant for the water. So he can swim miles in the water while he's getting nowhere up the tree. So people with low self-esteem will tend to focus on what they can't do instead of what they can do. And, we can't do everything. But we can do something. It's a really funny story. Srila Prabhupada, we've taken so much LSD. Does it destroy brain cells? Yes. What do we do? Use whatever brain you have left. So, you can compare that to, I'm not good at this, or this, or this, or this, or this. And someone would say, Prabhupada, I'm useless. And he would say, no, everybody's useful for something, even if it's for washing pots. If no one washes the pots, what are we going to do? So, in our society, it's all like, Prabhu, what do you do? And you say, well, I'm the head of this hospital, the head brain surgeon. I developed this mechanized system of brain surgery, and I wrote all the software. And I'm like, whoa, Prabhu, can I polish your toenails? Isn't it? Isn't that how we're trained? And I say, Prabhu, what are you doing? He says, I'm a garbage collector. Those trucks, I'm like, forget you. Okay, there we go, Prabhu. That's how we're trained. That's how society deals with us. So we deal with ourselves the same way. And so we're evaluating ourselves by what we do, how much money's in the bank, how many likes we have, and so forth. So low self-esteem is epidemic. I think Facebook created like 8 billion cases of low self-esteem or something. Isn't it? Because then you can go on and check. Well, how many people listen to my class? And you're like, 3. And you go, how many people listen to this Bhakti Bosa's class? Like 14 million. But my class was better than his. And then you can go home and cry. Yes? I just have a tendency to just speak things that are true because I think we need to talk about things that are true and not hide it. Yes, Trish?
Hi Krishna, this is always enlightening. My question is not really on the same thought pattern. Is that okay?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so I was thinking earlier, something happened today and it brought up a question for me. So I'll just give you the situation, and I just want to know your thoughts. So I woke up from Mangalarti, I chanted my japa, but I didn't finish. I took a nap at the end of the end of the japa period, instead of, going through and chanting my rounds, because I was kind of nodding off, so I thought, better to just nap now. Okay, so then we have the seminar, and then we have a break. And during that break, I had planned to chant my rounds, but I was asked to do some service. And so I was like, I'm not sure if I want to do that service, I really want to chant my rounds, but I had chosen to nap instead of chanting my rounds earlier. And my enemy that I chose was this enjoyer mentality. So is that me trying to be, how do you know when you're trying to enjoy, it's service, it's all service, so it's good, but how do you know when you're just choosing one or the other because you're wanting to enjoy, or if it's actually...
How do you know when you're trying to enjoy? That's easy all the time. We're just trying to stop it until we're more Krishna conscious. How do you know when you're thinking, your only thought is I exist for Krishna's pleasure? So when you're in that mood, when you come to these dilemmas, then your first thought is what will please Krishna the most.
What in that situation do you think doing the service and chanting later, or doing you're chanting and really committing to that, so you're not chanting?
Depends on the person, depends on the situation. Sometimes you might see it, I always wanted to do some humble service, now Krishna's giving it to me, so he's fulfilling that desire. Or you might think, I know if I do this, I'm not going to finish my rounds well, or you might think, it's a great opportunity to be of service and I'll just miss one of the classes and chant. So it depends on, miss a class, I don't want to miss a class. No, but do you think it's an opportunity to make a sacrifice for another devotee or for the devotee in charge? So there are different ways of looking at it, and it would depend. Both ways have their validity, because you have to maintain the integrity of your japa also. So it will depend on the devotee situation and some internal guidance. Yeah, sometimes I accept every service I'm asked in the mood of this is Krishna wants me to do it. And sometimes I'm maxed out and I just have to say no. So I do both, according to time and place. It doesn't really answer it, but it gives you some guidelines with which to answer.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes?
Prabhu, I'm thinking about that enemy within me,
Yes.
When I start looking towards that, it's become like a lot of layers start coming, and it's a lot of hard work, efforts, and it's very draining. And it seems like a never-ending story. And inside, I find myself very ugly, self of mine, and which sometimes give me more discouragement, just to finding who I am and how much impressions and what are suppression and what my real identity, I'm carrying is very surprising to see. And it seems like sometimes I'm fully consciousness to find myself instead of becoming Krishna consciousness. So sometimes I face that conflict.
You're saying that if you focus on that enemy, it's so discouraging to be aware of it, to know that's part of who you are.
Means I'm trying to find that underneath enemy, and there's a lot of more question I ask, there's more layers are coming.
Yeah.
Because even though I find first time what is my enemy, underneath there's real enemy, surface enemy I'm still finding.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a long way to go, and it
Yeah.
takes a lot of time, I feel like.
Yeah. But it's worth it. Because if that enemy is blocking your relation with Krishna, and you think, this is an obstacle to my relation with Krishna, then out of devotion to Krishna, to get closer, I need to work on this, because this is what's getting in the way. Just like you go to marriage counseling, and then you realize there's a certain behavior that's really upsetting your husband, and it's deteriorating the relationship. And the counselor says, this is the thing you need to work on. And then you want to save the relationship, and you know it's going to be hard to work on that, but you'll do it because you know the relationship is depending on it. So if you see it that way, you can turn it around, flip it around, it's positive. Like it's hard to deal with it, but if I don't, the relationship suffers. And the way I like to look at my relationship with Krishna is that he loves me, and he's waiting for me to love him. So, and our Krishna consciousness in a nutshell is just reciprocating with Krishna's love. That's all it is. What's the Bhagavad Gita? It's reciprocating with Krishna's love. Here's your Bhakti Shastri degree. You got it. That's what it is, basically. Right? So if we're thinking, I exist to reciprocate the love that Krishna gives me, then, okay, whatever I have to do that, because he's waiting for that relationship. Krishna's saying, I want the relationship. Can you, get your act together so we can dance? But if you have all this other stuff, you're not going to make it through the security gates, because all the anartha buzzers will go off. Bing, 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 lust, back down. Bing, 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 greed, back down. Yeah, and they have security gate around the Ras Leela also. Bing, 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 bhava only, back. You need prema. When you have prema, the green light goes on, then you get in. So Prabhupada's mood was, you can do that in this life, it's worth it. Right? Like if you want to be Krishna conscious, whatever you have to do is worth it. And I have done some really difficult things, but I always felt that these difficulties had their own rasa to them. Because if I wasn't doing this for Krishna, if I wasn't a devotee, I would be going through these same anxieties for my sense gratification. No doubt, right? So whatever problems you had in enjoying the world, you would try to work through them so you could be more emotionally healthy and have better relationships and so on. And you'd have the same problem. This is dark, this is difficult. But for Krishna, that's a great pleasure to do that. That's how we see it. Will that help?
Yes, I'm just thinking I'm carrying one of the very deep, subtle pain from the last 15 years. And I really try to look into that, and still I feel like I'm holding on to it and trying. Letting go is still, after so much trying and taking help, and still there. So does that mean I really, really don't want to let it go? It's very precious to me.
It could be, or it could be you need another methodology to deal with it. That the one you're using is not successful. It could be, and it could be a combo of both. Generally, it could be also that you have to give up. You have to just turn to Krishna and say, the Draupadi method. Like, I can't do this, I need your help. And show Krishna you want that. My own experience, I've had amazing transformations through prayer. Asking Krishna, change my mentality. I want to do this, or I want to see the world this way, but I'm seeing it in another way. Can you change it? Sometimes praying to Prabhupada, to Bhaktisiddhanta, to Radharani, whoever it is I feel that I need at that moment. I've had amazing experiences. Like, it just goes. I'm like, where did it go? That's amazing. That was like therapy on steroids. You know, Radharani therapy. You know. Especially when you're Holy Dham. I was just in the Holy Dham and I had Radharani therapy at Radharani. I was praying for something, to get rid of something, to show me how to see it so it won't bother me. And while I was putting water on my head, it just came to me. Oh my God. That's like you get an answer to a question, but that's the perfect answer. So that also could be part of it. Which of course then relates to a willingness. How willing am I to allow Krishna to reveal that to me? And also when you're willing, Krishna, he may not reveal it to you, but he may reveal a person to you who can do it, or a book to you, or a document, or something that answers that question. That also happens. So at least it's worth pursuing, asking yourself, do I really want to let this go? Because if we've been in a certain mode for so long, we're habituated to that way of thinking, we feel uncomfortable. Like the person who has to be stressed out is uncomfortable. Like the joke, the guy from New York, Manhattan, goes out in the country and he can't sleep because it's too quiet. So he plays a CD of traffic, like that. I'm way out of my comfort zone out here in the forest. There's no noise. I need noise to sleep. So it's like, some people, I think, they need dysfunction to function. And you get things from dysfunction. You get sympathy, you get so many things. So it's like, get addicted to dysfunction. I read a story about a man who was never visited by his friends, and he always was in the hospital for some ailment. And the psychologist realized, you get yourself sick subconsciously because all your friends come and see you in the hospital. Amazing, huh? I read that and I said, oh, worse than I thought. The mind is worse than I thought. So these are things to consider. Hare Krishna. Yes, we have 5 minutes.
Hare Krishna. I want to seek your elaboration on some of the self-introspection techniques, system, whatever you may have. I think I just feel drawn towards learning more about it to become more self-aware of my weaknesses and strengths.
Well, in the next seminar, we're going to do more. All the seminars will do more self-awareness exercises, so you'll kind of get to see. A lot of it is like I've studied a lot of this outside of ISKCON so I could learn to teach devotees. But you ask somebody, what is your fear? I said, this is my fear. And then you ask further questions. What were you afraid of losing? Well, just what questions? Like someone, here was a question. They said, do you lie? Have you ever lied? And they said, what were you afraid of that you had to lie? So just like something you normally wouldn't think of, like a coaching question. So these kind of questions that take you deeper. What do you want people to believe about you? Next question. Well, I want them to believe I'm a good devotee. So next question. Why? Why do you need them to believe that? So each question takes you to a deeper level of understanding yourself. I have a whole seminar like this. We did in Mayapur. 5 days and I only finished 1/4 of the book. So I took all these things that I learned and I put them into exercises where we asked all these questions. And we were meant to ask questions today. And so we'll ask them tomorrow and you'll see. It's just questions that cause you to be honest? Have you ever lied? What were you afraid of? Simple question. I never thought of that. You ever pretended to be someone you weren't? Why? What were you afraid of? That they would find out what I'm like? Why are you afraid that people would find out? Because you don't like yourself? You think they don't like you? Oh, I don't like myself. That's why I think about it. Why don't I like... You keep going deeper. Why don't I like myself? What would it be if I liked myself? I would feel that way? No. It's just, it's just self-awareness. And the reason I got into this, because it sounds like, well, this is just like pure psychology, because I saw how it was affecting our bhakti, affecting our relationships, especially our relationships. So affected by this. You know anything about confirmation bias? You believe. You come into a meeting believing what you believe, and nothing's going to change. How can we run a movement if we're all biased, prejudiced? You can't have meaningful meetings with it. And so, if you realize, I have prejudices I didn't realize. I have beliefs I didn't realize I had that are influencing me. So, we're seeing through a belief. It's a glass. And we don't even know we're wearing glasses. Because we've had that belief all our life. We don't know. We're looking at this situation through this belief. It's interesting, isn't it? So I started teaching it because I found it so useful in running a movement. When you have people that are self-aware, and with self-aware people, it's very easy to say, you made this mistake, and they're like, tell me about it. Because that's what they're doing all the time. They want to learn. They're happy. Thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that. Wouldn't that be nice? You tell your husband, you did this wrong. He's like, thank you for telling me. I appreciate it. Wouldn't that be nice? We're starting a school for husbands. Teach you how to be real husbands. All you have to do is say, thank you to your wife for pointing that out. I'll try to work on it. And all you have to say to the women is, don't take advantage. But we want to be humble. And there's this huge problem in a religious organization that if you just stay in long enough, you become a senior devotee by default. Prabhu's, when your hair turns gray, everyone's going to think you've been a devotee, like for the last 100 years. You are now a senior devotee. What happens when you're a senior devotee? You're respected. You're honored. Your jokes, same jokes, all of a sudden are better now because you're a senior devotee. Right? The same boring classes are all of a sudden exciting. Wow, Prabhu, that was the best class. 20 years ago, you gave that class and everybody said that was the worst class I ever heard. But now you're a senior devotee. Everyone's praising you. It's dangerous, isn't it? And what happens? You start to think you're right, you're entitled, you're better. So that's why I found all of this introspection so valuable. Because it's, we're in a somewhat dangerous environment. And on that happy note, we have to end now, it's 4:30. But if you have any other questions, then you could see me personally or you can ask tomorrow when I give class. Thank you for listening. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O Premanandi Hari Hari.